Supreme Commander Zek'thara of the Dominion fleet had conquered 47 worlds, and Earth was supposed to be the easiest yet until he discovered that what he thought were primitive toys scattered across the planet were actually the most terrifying weapons he'd ever encountered. Supreme Commander Zek'thara stood on the command deck of the Void Render, his flagship that had reduced entire civilizations to ash. The massive Korthain warrior was nearly 9 feet tall, with chitinous plates covering his body and 4 arms that had personally strangled the leaders of rebellious worlds. His violet eyes, each the size of a human fist, stared at the blue-green planet rotating slowly before him. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. This is what the scouts were so concerned about. He rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. Behind him, his officers, members of the proud Korthain Dominion that had ruled this galaxy arm for 3 millennia, shifted nervously. Captain Vexmuth, his tactical officer, activated the holographic display showing Earth's defensive positions. Sir, our long-range scans have detected numerous installations across the planet's surface. The humans appear to have some kind of defensive network. Zek'thara leaned forward, studying the data. What he saw made him throw back his massive head and release a sound that could only be described as laughter, if laughter could shatter glass. The other Korthains joined in, their chittering filling the bridge. Defensive network? Zek'thara wheezed, wiping moisture from his eyes. Vexmuth, are you certain these readings are correct? Yes, Commander. Our sensors are functioning perfectly. The hologram showed dozens of installations dotting Earth's continents. To Korthain eyes, trained to recognize the massive fortress cities and planetary shield generators that protected advanced civilizations, Earth's defenses looked like a child's toys. Small, simple structures barely larger than buildings. No massive energy signatures, no planet-wide barrier systems, no orbital defense platforms bristling with weapons. Look at this. Zek'thara pointed with one of his secondary arms at what appeared to be the humans' primary defensive installation, a modest facility in what their intelligence called Colorado. Their main command center looks like it could fit inside our shuttle bay. And these, he gestured at scattered installations across the planet, these tiny outposts are supposed to protect an entire world? Sub-Commander Krellinox, fresh from the conquest of the Zentari home world, stepped forward. The younger Korthain's plates still bore scorch marks from that campaign. Commander, perhaps the humans are hiding their real defenses. The Zentari tried to mislead us with decoy installations. Zek'thara's eyes narrowed, considering. Show me detailed scans of their largest installation. The hologram zoomed in on what human records called Norad Command. To the aliens, it appeared to be nothing more than a simple building built into a mountain, with what looked like primitive communication arrays and basic sensor equipment. Krellinox, Zek'thara said slowly. The Zentari decoys were sophisticated. Illusions masking massive weapons platforms. What do our sensors tell us about the energy output of this command center? Sir, Krellinox checked his readings twice before responding. The energy signature is barely sufficient to power a small city. Their most advanced equipment appears to be primitive radio transmitters and what might be early-stage quantum computers. The bridge erupted in laughter again. Even the normally stoic navigator Vexula was chittering with amusement. Radio transmitters, roared Zek'thara. They're defending their planet with the equivalent of smoke signals. He turned to address his full command crew. Warriors of the Dominion, we have traveled 16 light years to conquer a species that defends itself with toys. Captain Vexmuth pulled up additional data. Commander, our intelligence indicates they call these installations missile silos and radar stations. Their orbital assets consist of communication satellites and weather monitoring equipment. Missiles, Zek'thara was practically purring with amusement. Chemical propulsion, I assume. Correct, sir. Primitive chemical rockets with what appears to be conventional explosive warheads. Our hull armor could withstand their entire arsenal without so much as a scratch. The Supreme Commander walked to the massive viewport, gazing down at Earth with the satisfaction of a predator eyeing easy prey. In his long career, he had faced worlds protected by antimatter cannons that could crack moons, energy shields that could deflect star-killer weapons, and artificial intelligences that controlled fleets of autonomous warships. Earth had radio, dishes, and chemical rockets. How refreshingly simple, he mused. No need for the usual siege protocols. No months of wearing down planetary shields. No complex fleet maneuvers to avoid defense platforms. He turned back to his crew. Prepare the standard intimidation broadcast. These humans will surrender once they see what real military power looks like. Sir, interrupted Communications Officer Zek'thara, we're receiving multiple transmissions. From the planet's surface, they appear to be warnings. Put them through, Zek'thara commanded, curious to hear what primitive threats these humans might offer. A crackling transmission filled the bridge, translated by their universal language. Matrix, unknown vessels, this is NORAD command. You have entered Earth's defensive perimeter. Identify yourselves immediately or face defensive action. The bridge fell silent for exactly 3 seconds, before exploding in the loudest laughter yet. Several junior officers actually collapsed, their chitinous plates clicking against the deck as they shook with mirth. Defensive action, Zek'thara gasped. With what? Are they going to throw rocks at us? Sub-Commander Korthain wiped tears from his compound eyes. Commander, should we even bother with the intimidation broadcast? We could simply land and claim the planet. They clearly have no means to resist. Zek'thara considered this. It was true, every sensor reading confirmed that Earth possessed no genuine military threat. Their weapons were artifacts that belonged in a museum of primitive warfare. Their command centers had less computing power than a Korthain personal communicator, but tradition was tradition. The Dominion had protocols for conquest, and Zek'thara was nothing if not thorough. No, he decided. We follow proper procedure. Let them see the futility of resistance. Perhaps they'll at least provide some entertainment before they surrender. He paused, studying the innocent-looking planet below. Besides, I'm curious to see what these toys actually do when they try to defend themselves. It should be amusing. What Zek'thara couldn't know, what his sensors couldn't detect, and his experience couldn't prepare him for, was that humans had a very different definition of toys than the rest of the galaxy. 3 days later, Supreme Commander Zek'thara was more convinced than ever that conquering Earth would be embarrassingly easy. His fleet of 12 Dominion warships had taken positions around the planet, conducting what he generously called reconnaissance, but was really just an extended opportunity to mock human defensive capabilities. Commander, reported Captain Vexmuth from his station, we've completed detailed scans of 17 human installations. The results are, well, sir, they're exactly what we expected. Zek'thara gestured with his primary arm for the report too. Continue. Around him, his bridge crew had developed an almost casual attitude toward this invasion. Several officers were openly placing bets on how quickly the humans would surrender once the demonstration began. Their largest missile installation, they call it Malmstrom Air Force Base, contains approximately 150 chemical propulsion rockets, buried in underground silos. Vexmuth's voice carried barely contained amusement. Sir, our smallest escort vessel could absorb their entire nuclear arsenal without significant damage to our outer hull plating. Nuclear? Sub-Commander Korthain looked up from his tactical display. They're still using nuclear fission for their weapons? What's next, gunpowder? The bridge chittered with laughter. Navigator Zek'thara, who had remained silent during most discussions, finally spoke up. Commander, I've been analyzing their defensive network topology. It appears they've connected their installations using primitive fiber optic cables and radio waves. Radio waves, Zek'thara repeated slowly, as if tasting something particularly amusing. Vexula, remind me, when did the Dominion last use radio wave communications? Approximately 800 years ago, sir, when we developed quantum entanglement networks. And here's the most entertaining part, continued Vexmuth, clearly enjoying himself. Their command structure seems to operate on what they call redundant communication systems. They have multiple backup methods for sending messages between installations, including, and I'm not making this up, physical human couriers on wheeled vehicles. The laughter that erupted was so loud that it could be heard through the ship's hull plating. Even the usually stern communications officer, Ythandra, was clicking her mandibles in amusement. Wheeled vehicles, roared Zek'thara. They're prepared to defend their planet with messages carried by individuals riding primitive transportation. He wiped moisture from his compound eyes. I almost feel guilty taking this world. It's like stealing candy from a juvenile. But Zek'thara was thorough. If nothing else, over the following days, his fleet conducted increasingly detailed scans of Earth's defensive positions. What they found only reinforced their initial assessment. The humans had built what they called early warning radar systems, massive rotating dishes that could detect incoming objects. To the Korthains, who used gravitational wave sensors that could track a grain of sand across solar systems, Earth's radar was like watching someone use a magnifying glass to study distant stars. Their detection range is limited to approximately 15,000 kilometers, reported sensor technician Grextile during the daily briefing. Commander, our ships could approach Earth completely undetected simply by staying beyond their primitive scanning range. What about their space-based assets? Asked Zek'thara, though he expected nothing impressive. Surveillance satellites, sir. Chemical propulsion, basic optical sensors, and communication relays. Their most advanced orbital installation appears to be what they call the International Space Station, a small research facility with no weapons capability whatsoever. Krellinox pulled up additional data. Commander, I've been studying their military doctrine. It appears their primary defensive strategy involves launching their chemical rockets in retaliation against any attacker. They call this mutually assured destruction, mutually assured. Zek'thara paused, processing this concept. Are you telling me that their plan for defending their planet is to destroy it themselves? That appears to be correct, sir. Their theory seems to be that if they can't win, they'll make conquest costly by eliminating what the attacker wanted to claim. The bridge fell silent as the full absurdity of this strategy settled in. These humans had developed a defensive philosophy, based on the assumption that their attackers wanted their planet intact. It was like a child threatening to break their own toys rather than let someone else play with them. Remarkable, Zek'thara murmured. They've created a deterrent strategy that only works against enemies who share their primitive mindset. Any advanced civilization could simply disable their launch capability before they could implement their mutual destruction. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. What made the situation even more ridiculous was the humans' apparent confidence in these systems. Intercepted communications showed that Earth's military leaders genuinely believed their defenses were sophisticated. They had phrases like nuclear deterrent and strategic defense initiative that they used with apparent seriousness. Sir, Ythandra spoke up from her communication station. We're continuing to receive warnings from various human military installations. They seem to believe their threats are intimidating. Play the latest one, Zek'thara commanded. A human voice filled the bridge, speaking in the flat, authoritative tone of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Unknown vessels, this is General Patricia Hayes, NORAD Commander. You have ignored our warnings and maintained aggressive positioning around Earth. Be advised that we have defensive capabilities that you may not be aware of. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The bridge erupted again. "Defensive capabilities we're not aware of?" gasped Vexmoth. "What could they possibly have that our sensors haven't detected? Sharper sticks? Perhaps they have a secret cache of slightly larger chemical explosives," suggested Grixtol. "Or maybe," added Krulanox, "they've trained their wheeled vehicle couriers to drive really, really fast." Zek'thara raised a hand for silence, though he was still chuckling. "Enough. Tomorrow we begin the formal conquest. I want to see these mysterious defensive capabilities in action before we demonstrate what real weapons can do." As the laughter died down, Navigator Zek'thara made an observation that would later prove prophetic, though at the time it seemed merely academic. "Commander, there's one thing that puzzles me about these humans." "What's that, Zek'thara?" "For a species with such primitive technology, they seem remarkably calm. Our intercepts show no signs of panic, no desperate attempts to evacuate their population centers, no frantic calls for help to other species. Either they're incredibly brave, or what? Or they know something we don't." Zek'thara dismissed this with a wave of his secondary arm. "Zek'thara, we've scanned every square meter of this planet. We know exactly what they have, and it's nothing that could threaten a single Dominion shuttle, let alone a full battle fleet. Their calm is simply ignorance. They don't understand what they're facing." But as his fleet prepared for the next day's demonstration of superior firepower, Zek'thara couldn't quite shake the nagging feeling that Earth's defensive installations looked almost deliberately simple, as if someone had designed them to appear primitive to outside observers. He dismissed the thought immediately. After all, what possible reason could a species have for making their defenses look weaker than they actually were? The demonstration of Dominion power began at precisely 0800 Earth Standard Time. Supreme Commander Zek'thara had positioned his flagship directly above what humans called the Pacific Ocean, with his 11 other warships spread across the globe, in perfect formation above major population centers. "All vessels report ready, Commander," announced Captain Vexmoth, his voice carrying the professional satisfaction of a warrior about to complete an easy victory. "Phase 1 of the intimidation protocol is prepared for execution." Zek'thara nodded approvingly. Phase 1 was standard procedure, a limited demonstration of superior firepower designed to convince the target species that resistance was futile. Usually this involved destroying an uninhabited area or a minor military installation, just enough to show the locals what they were dealing with. "Target selection, Krulanox?" The sub-commander consulted his tactical display. "Sir, I recommend the installation they call Vandenberg Space Force Base. It's isolated on the coast of what they call California, minimal civilian population, and it appears to be one of their rocket launching facilities. Perfect for demonstrating the futility of their missile-based defense." "Excellent choice. Vexmoth, are the humans watching?" "Yes, sir. We've detected massive spikes in their communication traffic. Every major population center is tracking our movements. Their leaders are undoubtedly gathered in their command bunkers, waiting to see what we'll do." Zek'thara allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. This was always his favorite part of a conquest, the moment when a species realized they were completely outmatched. He'd seen it 47 times before, the initial defiance, then the growing fear as superior technology made itself known, and finally the desperate surrender. "Communications, open a channel to all Earth military frequencies." Ythandra's fingers danced over her console. "Channel open, Commander." Zek'thara's voice boomed across every military communication system on Earth, translated into dozens of human languages simultaneously. "People of Earth, I am Supreme Commander Zek'thara of the Korthain Dominion. For 3,000 years my people have brought order to this sector of the galaxy. You will now witness the power that has conquered 47 worlds. He gestured to Vexmuth, who targeted Vandenberg with the Void Render's secondary plasma cannon, not even their main weapon, just a minor system used for clearing space debris. The beam that lanced down from orbit was visible even in daylight. A column of superheated energy that struck the Earth with the force of a small star. Where Vandenberg's Space Force base had stood, there was now a perfectly circular crater 3 kilometers wide and half a kilometer deep. The surrounding area for dozens of kilometers was scorched flat. The Earth turned to glass by temperatures that could melt titanium. Scan for human reaction, Zek'thara commanded. Grextal's sensor arrays swept across the planet. Commander, their communication networks are operating at maximum capacity. We're detecting emergency broadcasts, military channels activating backup protocols, and... Sir, they're not surrendering. Not yet? Zek'thara was mildly surprised. Usually, a demonstration like that brought immediate capitulation. What are they doing? It appears they're mobilizing their defenses, sir. We're detecting increased activity at their missile installations. Their radar stations are switching to active scanning mode, and their military leadership is implementing what they call DEFCON 1. Krellinox looked up from his tactical station, confusion evident in his compound eyes. Commander, they're preparing to fight? After seeing what we just did to their installation. Apparently so, Zek'thara mused. Perhaps they need a more convincing demonstration. Destroy their capital city. Sir, Yathandra interrupted. We're receiving a transmission from their command center. Put it through. The voice that filled the bridge belonged to General Patricia Hayes, the same human who had been issuing warnings for days. But now her tone had changed. It was harder, more determined. Commander Zek'thara, your attack on Vandenberg was an act of war against Earth. We will not surrender. We will not bow to alien tyranny. And if you proceed with further attacks, you will discover that Earth's defenses are not what they appear to be. The bridge fell silent. After a moment, Vexmuth spoke carefully. Commander, are they threatening U.S. after we just demonstrated our capability to destroy their installations at will? It appears they are, Zek'thara replied, genuinely puzzled. In his experience, species this primitive usually understood the concept of overwhelming force. Perhaps humans were simply too primitive to grasp what they were facing. Sir, Grextal called out urgently, I'm detecting massive energy spikes across the planet. Their missile installations are powering up their launch systems. They're actually going to try to fight us, breathed Krellinox, with chemical rockets. Zek'thara almost felt sorry for them. It was like watching children prepare to fight a tornado with sticks and stones. Very well. If they insist on learning the hard way, we'll give them a proper demonstration. All ships, prepare for Phase 2. We'll disable their launch capability before they can implement their mutually assured destruction nonsense. But as his fleet moved into attack formation, something strange began happening on Earth's surface. The energy signatures from their defensive installations weren't just increasing. They were changing in ways that Korthain sensors had never recorded before. Grexto, what are you reading down there? The sensor technician's voice carried a note of confusion. Sir, the humans appear to be activating systems that weren't there before. I'm detecting new energy patterns, quantum fluctuations that don't match any known technology, and... Commander, some of these readings don't make sense. Elaborate. Well, sir, that installation in Colorado, their NORD command center is now showing an energy output approximately 1,000 times greater than our initial scans detected. But our sensors show no new equipment, no additional power sources, nothing that could account for the increase. Navigator Thexula turned from her station, her earlier observation weighing on her mind. Commander, I'm detecting similar anomalies at installations across the planet. It's as if these facilities had hidden capabilities that are only now being revealed. Zek'thara felt the first stirring of unease. In 47 conquests, he had never encountered a species that revealed hidden defensive capabilities after seeing a demonstration of Dominion firepower. Usually they revealed everything they had in desperate attempts to drive off the attackers. "Sir," Yathandra called out, "we're receiving another transmission from Earth." This time, the voice belonged to someone new, a calm, elderly human male, who spoke with the quiet confidence of someone who had seen everything. "Commander Zek'thara, this is Dr. Samuel Chun, Director of Earth's Planetary Defense Initiative. Your attack on Vandenberg has activated protocols that have been in place for over 50 years. I strongly advise you to withdraw your forces immediately." Planetary Defense Initiative? Krellinox checked his intelligence files. "Commander, we have no record of any such organization." "Because you weren't supposed to," came Dr. Chun's voice, clearly intercepting their communication frequencies, something that should have been impossible with primitive radio technology. "Commander, you've made several assumptions about Earth's defensive capabilities. All of them are incorrect." Zek'thara's unease was growing into something approaching concern. "Dr. Chen, we have scanned your entire planet. We know exactly what weapons you possess, and they pose no threat to Dominion vessels." "You scanned what we wanted you to see," Dr. Chun replied calmly. "You observed the systems we designed to look primitive to outside observers. What you couldn't detect were the systems we actually built to defend this planet." "Impossible," Zek'thara growled. "Our sensors are the most advanced in the galaxy. Nothing can hide from Dominion scanning technology." "Commander," Dr. Chun's voice carried what sounded almost like pity, "you've just made the same mistake that 47 other species made when they encountered something they didn't understand. You assumed that advanced technology has to look advanced." On the tactical display, energy readings from Earth's surface were spiking beyond anything in Korthain databases. The primitive installations that had seemed so laughably weak were now generating power signatures that rivaled Dominion warships. And for the first time in his military career, Supreme Commander Zek'thara of the Korthain Dominion felt afraid. The first sign that something was terribly wrong came from the Talon strike. Krellinox's escort vessel positioned above what humans called Europe. The young sub-commander's voice crackled over the fleet communication system, and for the first time since the invasion began, it carried genuine alarm. "Commander Zek'thara, I'm detecting massive energy buildup at a human installation in the Swiss Alps." "Sir, these readings they're impossible." Zek'thara's primary arms gripped his command throne. "Krellinox, clarify impossible. The energy signature is consistent with a matter-antimatter reaction, but sir, our intelligence indicated that humans haven't developed antimatter technology. The power output is approaching that of our main engines." "That's ridiculous," Captain Vexmuth interjected. "Our scans showed that facility to be a simple mountain research station, probably studying their primitive weather patterns or some such nonsense." But sensor technician Grextal was studying his displays with growing concern. "Commander, I'm detecting similar energy spikes at 17 other locations. The installation in Colorado is now showing power generation levels that exceed our flagship's main reactor by a factor of 3. Navigator Thexula turned from her station, her earlier unease now vindicated. "Sir, I'm also detecting quantum tunnel formations around several of these installations. That's technology that the Dominion developed only 2 centuries ago." The bridge fell silent except for the humming of ship systems and the increasingly frantic beeping of sensor alerts. Supreme Commander Zek'thara, conqueror of 47 worlds, stared at the tactical display showing Earth's primitive defensive installations, transforming before his eyes into something that resembled advanced military technology. "Grextal," he said slowly, "run a full-spectrum analysis of that Colorado installation. I want to know what we're really looking at." "Yes, sir. Scanning now. Commander, this is..." Grextal's voice trailed off as he stared at his readings. Sir, the installation is generating a gravitational field. They're manipulating space-time itself. That's impossible, Vexmoth declared. Gravitational manipulation requires technology that only the most advanced species possess. These humans still use chemical propulsion. Sir, Yathandra called from communications. We're receiving another transmission from Dr. Chun. Put him through, Zek'thara commanded, his voice noticeably less confident than before. Dr. Chun's calm voice filled the bridge. Commander, your sensors are now detecting our actual defensive capabilities. What you initially scanned were deliberate. Facade systems designed to appear primitive while concealing their true nature. We call it defensive camouflage. Defensive camouflage, Zek'thara repeated slowly. You deliberately made your weapons appear primitive? Commander, Earth has been preparing for this moment for over 70 years. When we first detected evidence of advanced alien civilizations, we realized that looking weak might be our best defense. We built systems that would appear laughably inferior to any scanning technology while functioning at levels that would surprise even advanced species. Krellinok's voice came over the fleet channel again, now clearly shaken. Commander, I need to report. Something just happened to the Talon strike. We experienced what can only be described as a localized space-time distortion. For approximately 3 seconds, our ship existed in a temporal loop. Sir, somehow the humans affected the flow of time around our vessel. The blood in Zek'thara's veins turned to ice water. Temporal manipulation was considered theoretical even by Dominion science. Are you certain, Krellinok? Yes, sir. My science officer confirms it. The distortion originated from that Swiss installation, the one our intelligence claimed was a weather research station. Dr. Chun's voice continued, as if he could hear their conversation. The Jungfrau-Juk facility, Commander. We told your scouts it was for climate research. Technically, that wasn't a lie. We do study how to create localized climate conditions. We just didn't mention that we can create those conditions anywhere in the solar system, including around your ships. Grexta looked up from his sensor array, his compound eyes wide with disbelief. Commander, I'm detecting weapon systems that shouldn't be possible. That installation in Nevada is generating coherent gravitational waves. The facility in Australia appears to be manipulating quantum fields on a macro scale. And sir, the one in Antarctica is doing something to the fabric of space itself that I don't even have words for. How? Zek'thara's voice was barely above a whisper. How did our intelligence completely fail to detect any of this? Because we designed it that way, Dr. Chun replied. Commander, when you've been the most primitive species in your galactic neighborhood for centuries, you learn to be very, very careful about revealing your true capabilities to potential enemies. Captain Vexmoth was frantically checking his tactical systems. Commander, I'm trying to target these installations for preemptive strikes, but something is interfering with our weapon systems. Every time I lock onto a target, the targeting data becomes scrambled. That would be our quantum interference network, Dr. Chun explained with what sounded almost like scholarly pride. Any weapon system that attempts to target our installations will find that the quantum information describing those targets becomes uncertain. You can't destroy what you can't properly observe. Navigator Thexala turned to Zek'thara, her voice urgent. Commander, I strongly recommend we withdraw to a safe distance while we reassess the situation. Withdraw? Zek'thara's warrior pride rebelled against the very concept. From a single primitive planet? Sir, Grextel interrupted, I'm detecting new activity. Multiple installations across Earth are now targeting our fleet with systems that didn't exist 5 minutes ago. They didn't exist 5 minutes ago because they weren't active, Dr. Chun corrected. Commander, I'm going to give you some information that might save your lives. Those toy installations you've been laughing at, each one is more powerful than your entire fleet combined. The reason you couldn't detect this is because we've spent 70 years perfecting the art of making advanced technology look primitive. How is that possible? Krellinox demanded over the fleet channel. Simple, Dr. Chun replied. We learned that the greatest defense isn't looking strong, it's making your enemies underestimate you. Every piece of equipment you scanned, every energy reading you took, every intelligence report your scouts filed, all of it was carefully crafted to make Earth appear to be exactly the kind of weak, primitive world that advanced species tend to ignore until it's too late. Zek'thara felt the foundations of his understanding crumbling. In 47 conquests, he had never encountered anything like this. Species either fought with everything they had from the beginning, or they surrendered. When faced with superior force, none had ever deliberately appeared weaker than they actually were. Sir, Grextal's voice carried panic now. All human installations are now fully active. I'm detecting energy patterns that are. Commander, some of these readings are completely outside our understanding of physics. Whatever they're preparing to do, we need to make a decision now. Dr. Chun's voice came through one final time, gentle but implacable. Commander Zek'thara, you have approximately 60 seconds to begin withdrawing your forces before Earth's actual defensive systems engage. I want to be very clear about something. What you did to Vandenberg was an attack on our planet. What we're about to do to your fleet will be a demonstration of why that was a mistake. Zek'thara stared at the tactical display, watching as Earth's primitive installations powered up. Systems that his sensors couldn't even properly categorize. For the first time in his military career, the Supreme Commander of the Korthain Dominion faced the possibility that he had encountered something beyond his ability to defeat, and in the deepest part of his warrior's mind, a single terrifying thought began to form. What if Earth's toys were actually the most sophisticated weapons in the galaxy? Supreme Commander Zek'thara had exactly 37 seconds left to make his decision when Earth's toys revealed their true nature. It began with the installation in Colorado NORAD Command, the primitive facility that had seemed barely capable of tracking weather balloons. The mountain simply opened, not like a door or a hangar, but like reality itself was being carefully folded back to reveal what lay beneath. What emerged defied every principle of engineering that the Korthain Dominion had developed over 3 millennia of spacefaring civilization. Commander, Grextal whispered, his voice barely audible over the sensor alarms that were now screaming throughout the ship. That's not a building. That's not even a weapon. I don't know what that is. Rising from the Colorado mountains was a structure that seemed to exist in more dimensions than space should allow. It was geometric, crystalline, and somehow bigger than the space it occupied. Energy coursed through it in patterns that created new colors, wavelengths of light that shouldn't exist. That made looking directly at it cause Korthain optical sensors to simply stop functioning. Sir, Krellinox's voice crackled over the fleet channel, now openly panicked. The Swiss installation, it's not rising, it's... Commander, it's unfolding. Like a flower made of space-time itself, and the gravitational readings. Sir, it's creating artificial gravity wells that are stronger than the ones around gas giants. But the true revelation came when Dr. Chun's voice filled not just their communication systems, but somehow seemed to speak directly into their minds. Commander, allow me to introduce you to Earth's actual planetary defense network. What you're seeing now took us 70 years to build and another 30 years to perfect. Each installation you dismissed as primitive is what we call reality. Anchor a system capable of manipulating the fundamental forces of the universe within a localized field. The installation in Nevada revealed itself next. The simple radar station expanded into a complex of impossible architecture that seemed to bend light around itself. Energy readings spiked beyond anything in Korthain databases as the structure began generating what Grextal could only describe as controlled Singularities. Controlled singularities? Zek'thara stared at his sensor readouts in disbelief. They're creating black holes as defensive weapons? Not black holes, Commander, Dr. Chun corrected. Gravitational distortion fields. We can make your ships heavier than neutron stars or lighter than photons. We can change the local gravitational constant around each of your vessels independently. Tell me, how effective are your engines when we multiply your ship's mass by a factor of 1,000,000? To demonstrate, the Nevada installation focused on the void render itself. Suddenly, Zek'thara felt his body pressed against his command throne as his flagship, a vessel capable of crossing galaxies, became too heavy to maintain its position in space. Emergency systems screamed as the ship began falling toward Earth's surface despite having engines powerful enough to push asteroids. Restore normal gravity, Zek'thara commanded, but Vexmuth shook his head helplessly. Sir, our engines are operating at full power, but according to our instruments, we now have the mass of a small moon. The gravitational field is localized around our ship, but I don't understand how they're generating it. Just as suddenly, the effect stopped. The void render returned to normal mass, leaving the crew shaken and the ship's systems recalibrating frantically. That was the gentlest possible demonstration, Dr. Chun informed them. Now observe what the Australian installation can do. The facility that their intelligence had labeled as a communications array revealed itself to be something far more disturbing. As its true form emerged, a complex of crystalline structures that seemed to exist partially outside normal space. Korthain. Instruments began detecting impossible readings. Commander, Drexdal reported, his voice shaking, the Australian installation appears to be editing the quantum properties of matter within a 1,000-kilometer radius. Sir, they're changing the fundamental constants of physics in localized areas. To prove the point, the installation focused on the Talon strike. Krelinok's frantic voice filled the fleet channel. Commander, my ship's hull it's becoming transparent. The atomic bonds in our armor plating are being altered at the quantum level. They're making our defenses simply not work. The escort vessel, which moments before had been a fearsome Dominion warship, was now as fragile as glass. Its weapons couldn't charge because the electrons in its power systems were behaving according to different physical laws than the ones that governed the rest of the universe. Again, the effect stopped, leaving the Talon strike restored, but its crew thoroughly demoralized. The installation in Antarctica, Dr. Chun continued with scholarly precision, specializes in temporal manipulation. Would you like a demonstration of how we can make your ships experience time differently than the space around them? No, Zek'thara shouted, his warrior's pride finally crumbling in the face of incomprehensible superiority. Dr. Chen, we surrender. We formally surrender to Earth's defensive forces. There was a pause before Dr. Chun responded, and when he did, his voice carried genuine surprise. Commander, that's the first time anyone has surrendered to us before we finished our demonstration. Most species insist on seeing what all 12 installations can do. 12? Navigator Thexuila looked at her displays in horror. We've only seen 4 of them. Correct. The others handle different aspects of planetary defense. The one in Japan manipulates the strong nuclear force. The African installation controls electromagnetic fields on a planetary scale. The South American facility can phase matter in and out of this dimension entirely. And the installation in the Arctic. Dr. Chun paused. Well, let's just say it handles threats we haven't encountered yet, but we're prepared for them. Zek'thara slumped in his command throne, the weight of total defeat crushing down on him. Dr. Chun, how is this possible? How does a species develop technology this advanced while appearing so primitive? Commander, we had a very good teacher. About 80 years ago, we encountered evidence of an ancient civilization that had been destroyed by species who feared their advanced technology. We learned from their mistake. Instead of developing weapons that looked impressive, we developed weapons that looked harmless. Instead of building ships that screamed advanced civilization, we made sure our most sophisticated technology looked like simple maintenance equipment. Captain Vexmuth found his voice, though it cracked with disbelief. The nuclear missiles, the radar stations, all of it? All camouflage, Dr. Chun confirmed. The nuclear missiles are real, of course, but they're not weapons, they're delivery systems for our reality anchors. The radar stations aren't for detection, they're for focusing quantum fields. Even our space station isn't what it appears to be. Everything you scanned, everything your intelligence reported, was designed to make Earth look like exactly the kind of primitive world that advanced species would dismiss as harmless. Zek'thara realized the full scope of humanity's deception. You wanted us to attack. We wanted you to reveal your intentions, Dr. Chun corrected. Commander, in the 70 years since we detected advanced alien civilizations, 43 different species have approached our solar system. 39 of them studied us, determined we were no threat, and left us alone. 3 others made peaceful contact and are now our allies. You are the first to actually attack us. What happens now? Zek'thara asked, the question of a defeated warrior. Now, Dr. Chun said gently, you get to make a choice. You can become the 48th species you've conquered, or you can become the first species that Earth has conquered, and then taught to be better than they were. As Zek'thara considered this unprecedented offer, he realized that in his long career of conquest, he had finally encountered something he had never expected to find, a species that had mastered the ultimate defensive strategy making there. Enemies defeat themselves through their own assumptions. Earth's toys, it turned out, were the most sophisticated weapons in the galaxy, precisely because they looked like nothing more than toys. 6 months later, Supreme Commander Zek'thara stood in what humans called the Pentagon, though he now understood it was no more the center of Earth's military power than NORAD had been a simple mountain bunker. The real command centers were hidden beneath layers of technology so sophisticated that they made the reality anchors look primitive by comparison. Beside him stood Dr. Samuel Chun, the human who had orchestrated the most comprehensive military defeat in Korthain history without firing a single conventional shot. The elderly scientist wore the simple clothing typical of his species, but Zek'thara now knew better than to judge anything human by its appearance. Your crews are adapting well to the new paradigm, Dr. Chun observed, reviewing reports on his tablet. A device that Zek'thara had learned contained processing power that exceeded the Void Render's main computer. Captain Vexmuth's tactical analyses of defensive camouflage have been particularly insightful. Zek'thara nodded, his pride no longer wounded by the admission of inferiority. My officers are humbled by what we've learned. For 3,000 years, the Dominion believed that overwhelming force was the pinnacle of military strategy. You've shown us that the greatest strength lies in appearing to have no strength at all. The transformation had not been easy. When Dr. Chun had offered the choice between conquest and education, Zek'thara's warrior instincts had initially rebelled. The Korthain way was simple. Defeat meant death or slavery. The concept of being defeated and then offered partnership was so alien that it had taken weeks for his crew to believe it was genuine. The hardest part, Zek'thara continued, was understanding that you had been preparing for us specifically. Not just for the Korthains, but for the mentality that drives species like ours. Dr. Chun smiled. Expression Zek'thara had learned indicated amusement rather than aggression. Commander, when you've been studying galactic politics for 70 years, certain patterns become apparent. Species that develop faster than light travel tend to fall into one of 3 categories: explorers, traders, or conquerors. We prepared different responses for each type. And if we had been explorers, You would have been welcomed with open arms and invited to share in our scientific discoveries. If you had been traders, we would have negotiated mutually beneficial exchanges. But since you were conquerors, Dr. Chun shrugged. We gave you exactly what conquerors expect to find: a weak species ripe for domination. Sub-Commander Krulanox, who had requested permission to remain on Earth for extended study, approached with one of his daily reports. The young Korthain officer had become fascinated by human defensive philosophy and was now working with Earth's Strategic Planning Division. Commander, Krulanox said, I've completed my analysis of the Jungfo facility. The temporal manipulation system is. Commander, it's not actually manipulating time. It's manipulating the perception of time within localized fields. The humans have weaponized the subjective experience of temporal flow itself. Dr. Chun nodded approvingly. Very good, Krulanox. You're beginning to understand how human defensive technology works. We don't change reality, we change how our opponents experience reality. Much more efficient and far less likely to cause unintended consequences. Zek'thara found this approach both elegant and terrifying. Dr. Chun, when we first scanned Earth, our sensors detected exactly what you wanted us to detect. But how did you predict what scanning techniques we would use? Simple, Dr. Chun replied. We studied the wreckage of the 47 species you had conquered. Their ship debris, their technology, their sensor arrays, all of it told us exactly how Dominion science approaches the problem of gathering intelligence. We designed our camouflage specifically to fool your particular type of sensors. The revelation that Earth had been studying Korthain military techniques for decades through battlefield archaeology was another humbling realization. Not only had humans anticipated the invasion, they had tailored their defenses specifically to counter Dominion technology. Navigator Zek'thara, who had proven remarkably adaptable to new concepts, entered the briefing room with her latest findings. Commander, Dr. Chun, I've been analyzing the quantum field data from the Australian installation, the physics involved. It's not just advanced, it's completely different from how we understand the universe to work. That's because you've been thinking about the universe wrong, Dr. Chun explained patiently. Most species develop technology by forcing the universe to behave the way they want it to. Humans learned to ask the universe what it wanted to do, then found ways to encourage it to do that in specific locations, much more efficient than brute force. This philosophical difference had proven to be the most difficult concept for the Korthain officers to grasp. Their entire technological development had been based on overpowering natural forces through superior engineering. The idea of cooperating with physical laws rather than dominating them was revolutionary. Dr. Chun, Zek'thara asked, what will happen to the other worlds the Dominion has conquered? Now that we understand our methods were flawed, that's up to you, Commander. Earth's offer of partnership includes assistance in developing new approaches to interstellar relations. We can help you transform the Dominion from a conquering empire into a cooperative federation. Zek'thara considered this. And the 47 worlds we've subjugated could become the first 47 members of a new kind of galactic alliance. One based on mutual benefit rather than domination. Dr. Chun activated a holographic display showing Earth's current diplomatic relationships. As I mentioned, 3 other species have made peaceful contact with us. The Zentari Collective, the Aquinas Republic, and the Helix Confederation. All 3 initially approached with hostile intent, but when they saw our true capabilities, they chose cooperation over conquest. How many others know about Earth's real defensive power? Currently, just the 4 species who've encountered it directly. But word is spreading. The galactic community is beginning to understand that there's a small blue planet in this sector that's far more dangerous than it appears. Captain Vexmuth, who had been quietly studying human tactical manuals, looked up from his reading. Dr. Chun, I have to ask, what would you have done if we had chosen to continue fighting after the demonstration? Dr. Chun's expression grew serious. Commander Vexmoth, I hope you never have to find out. The 12 installations you've seen are what we call our gentle persuasion systems. We have others that are less diplomatic. The implications of this statement hung in the air like a threatening storm cloud. If Earth's gentle persuasion could make Dominion warships experience different physics, different gravity, and different temporal flow, what could their serious weapons do? But, Dr. Chun continued, his tone brightening, that's not a path we want to explore. The whole point of defensive camouflage is to avoid having to use overwhelming force. Much better to convince potential enemies that they don't want to fight you in the first place. As the meeting concluded, Zek'thara reflected on how completely his understanding of power had changed. 6 months ago, he'd believed that strength meant having the biggest weapons and the fastest ships. Now he understood that true strength meant never having to use those weapons because your enemies defeated themselves. Dr. Chun, he said as they prepared to leave, I have one final question. Why did you choose to educate us rather than simply destroy us? It would have been easier. Dr. Chun paused at the door, considering his answer carefully. Commander, humans learned long ago that enemies you destroy stay dead, but enemies you convert become friends. Friends are much more useful than corpses. As Zek'thara walked through the corridors of the Pentagon, which he now knew was itself a carefully crafted facade hiding technology that could reshape solar systems, he realized that Earth had taught him the most valuable lesson in his military career. The greatest victory isn't defeating your enemies. It's making them grateful that you won. And somewhere in the depths of space, other species were learning that the small blue planet in the Sol system was home to beings who had mastered the ultimate weapon, the ability to turn conquest into cooperation, and enemies into allies. Earth's toys, it turned out, weren't just the most sophisticated weapons in the galaxy, they were the most sophisticated diplomatic tools as well. Supreme Commander Zek'thara never conquered another world. Instead, he spent the rest of his career helping other species learn what he had discovered. That the greatest defense isn't looking strong, it's making your enemies choose to be weak. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.